You know, a thousand lives, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles that are no longer with us, and tragically, there's still many to come in Colorado nationally and internationally. Somebody asked me the other day, "Are you are you glad that there's only that many casualties in Colorado?" And I said, "No, we don't want to have any, and each one is a tragedy. I am glad, however, that it's not tens of thousands." By acting quickly, by staying home, by wearing masks when you go out, you have successfully averted the fate that's met our brothers and sisters in New York and Italy and other areas at those rates. Nothing to celebrate, but something to be proud of as a state for doing our best to succeed in social distancing and wearing masks. So I flew to Washington today. I want to describe that experience, and then, of course, what you want to hear about the meeting in the White House. First of all, flying is quite an experience these days. It's certainly something you don't want to do if you don't have to. My partner, my kids, my mom were all saying, "Don't do it, don't do it." But you know what? I was invited by the President of the United States to talk about Colorado's needs and update them, and that's really not an invitation that I could turn down. In my capacity as governor of the state of Colorado, I need to pursue all possible options that can provide life-saving supplies for the people of Colorado and make sure that our president is not just sequestered in the White House and really has the knowledge of what's really going on in the states, on the ground, the anxiety, the fear that people of our state and our country face, the worries that businesses have about being able to keep their doors open. So, of course, I said yes. I got up at 4:30 this morning and went to the airport. A lot of the regular flights to DC are canceled, so I had to go through Dallas to DC to get there. It's a flight from Denver to DC I took almost every week of my life during my decade in Congress. I commuted back and forth. Flying was a necessary evil. I always, did light spirits and would eat and read a book. This time it was tense. It was very tense. Everybody's wearing a mask, both the flight attendants as well as the passengers. More people than I would have liked on the flight. But we made it, and hopefully nobody was exposed to the virus, and we all wait for a day where we can freely travel again, whether it's for vacations in Mexico or Europe or Asia, or whether it's to see family in either coast. Now it's not for the faint at heart. And I look forward to returning to Colorado tomorrow as soon as possible to the safety of my home and my family. So, went to the White House. First of all, they tested all of us. That was the first nasal test that I had for coronavirus. They put not the kind where they put the swab all the way up your nose, but just one where they wave it around for 10 seconds. It kind of tickled as a 20-minute test. Came back negative. That's why, some people asked part of the time I was meeting with the president and others, we didn't have to have our masks on because everybody in that environment had been tested. It's not the normal environment of a meeting in Colorado or my normal press briefings where everybody would wear masks. Everybody had been through that test. And it was only a day or two ago that the White House actually found several members of the White House team that tested positive and had actually been around people, including the Vice President of the United States, who's now quarantining himself and attending meetings virtually from his office or from his home. So we were all tested. We then went in and joined the president. I say we, it was the governor of North Dakota, myself, and then we were joined by a few others, Secretary Bernhardt, two senators, and then we brought Jill Ryan, the Secretary of Health for Colorado, the head of Department of Health and Environment, and her counterpart from North Dakota was there as well, Governor Burgum's health secretary. So a small group around a cabinet table. We had some distancing between us, but remember we had all been tested. Then the press was there for part of it, and we were there privately for part of it. And in recounting this, I can't always remember which part the press was for and not. So I'm just going to recount some of my experiences and what I told the president and some of the viewpoints that he shared. Of course, when the press was there asking questions, it veered off into other topics. People asked about Afghanistan, they asked about other topics. I'm going to focus on COVID-19 and coronavirus. Uh, we talked about a couple things. Both, I think everybody across the country, it's not an ideological thing, far left, far right, anywhere in the middle. Everybody wants to figure out how people can earn a living and get by and we can function and at the same time be as safe as possible. This is a really tricky needle to thread, right? We want to make sure that while people are able to have a fulfilling life economically, psychologically, it's also as safe as possible from a health perspective. Colorado, based on the data that's been presented to me, has been doing the best that we can to do that. We were proud to be able to open our retail stores, be able to make sure that throughout the entire period, unlike some states, all of our restaurants were open, doing curbside delivery and doing dine out and countertop service, just not the dine in, sitting down delivery, which they're still not quite able to do in most of our state. There's a few counties where they're already doing some dine in. So we talked about some of those models and how we can do that in a safe way. I referenced that I hope that there might even be some skiing in Colorado. A lot of people around the world don't know that we have June skiing in Colorado, often through 4th of July, not in many of our world-class ski resorts, but in a few of them, Arapahoe Basin and Wolf Creek, Loveland, sometimes Breckenridge, just depends on the snow. And we're hoping that there's a way to do that in June, but it all depends on the data that's presented at the time. Dr. Birx was also in attendance, a renowned World Health official that has worked on AIDS in Africa, is one of the top advisors to the president. We certainly hope he listens to her. She's been at a number of his news conferences. She was very complimentary of Colorado's work, leading the way on testing and tracing, which really gets to the meat of it. One of the reasons that an invitation to meet with the president is always an invitation that you can't refuse is the opportunity to advance Colorado's needs and how we can better partner with the federal government to be able to make sure that we have the testing and supplies that can literally translate into saving lives in our state. We have worked through private supply chains to acquire additional testing. We've purchased testing from South Korea. We now got the firm commitment of the president that, in fact, 96,000 tests and related equipment from Thermo Fisher have arrived and are being sent out to Colorado within the next day or two. That's part of the 195,000 that we expect for the month of June through our partnership with the federal government. When we were talking to suppliers, and I talked to the CEO of Thermo Fisher not too long ago, one of the testing suppliers, the question was that they had is they didn't know how to allocate between the different states. And so we're doing that in a centralized manner. The supplies are still shipped from the provider, Thermo Fisher, but it's coordinated through the federal government. This is what will help Colorado reach our testing goals, which is at least 8,500 a day. There are likely to even be some 10,000 test days in late May, early June. We want to make sure that we can deliver that. We already have 32 free testing sites, community testing sites across Colorado. You can go to covid19.colorado.gov and you can find the section that has the map of those sites. And we expect to have even more. And that's really a result of two things. First of all, the great work of our emergency operations organization, our innovation group, in helping to source additional tests from South Korea, the great work of our state lab in gearing up the processing. And then, yes, this piece, the partnership with the federal government around making sure that we also are able to partner with domestic suppliers and the federal government to have the viral media, the tests, the swabs, all of the equipment that's necessary to do that. We handle the logistics on the ground, and Dr. Birx was very complimentary of Colorado's effort and success around the testing piece and then rapidly increasing the tracing and quarantine piece, which is one of the reasons that we're focused on making sure that we make the most of testing going forward. We also talked about supplies generally. One of the programs that we're very appreciative of through FEMA is scheduled to deliver their first round of masks and personal protection equipment to our nursing homes and senior centers across the state May 18th. They also have told us to expect one additional shipment for our nursing homes and senior centers later in May. I wanted to personally let the president know, and I did, that it's very important that that program of supplying medical quality masks to our senior centers continues into June and very likely July while we are rapidly purchasing medical grade equipment in the international markets, much of it is going, first of all, to our medical providers and our hospitals, many of which have different standards of care and are using masks longer than they like. Second of all, of course, to our first responders and others, we want to make sure that there is enough for all of our nursing homes and senior centers, and for the state to have a little bit more breathing room, not to have to do that ourselves, and for the federal government to meet that for another month or two would be extremely helpful. in saving lives and reducing the death count at our senior centers. That's also one of the reasons that ramping up the testing is so important. Remember that during the month of May, Colorado really has four main areas that we're focused on. Of course, testing and tracing is one of them. Protecting our most vulnerable is one of them, which I'm going to get back to in a moment. Continued social distancing, reducing our social interactions, staying 6 feet apart where we can, and wearing masks in public. That's our four keys to success for May and beyond. Around protecting the most vulnerable, that's one of the reasons for the increased testing. We're not only testing symptomatic folks in Colorado to find out whether they have a cold or COVID-19, we are also testing asymptomatic, meaning perfectly healthy people that work at our senior centers so we can filter out of the workforce anybody who tests positive to prevent additional outbreaks that would cost lives. We know that about half the people that contract COVID-19 don't develop symptoms, or they might be asymptomatic but contagious for a period of time and later might experience cold like symptoms, but they're contagious before. That's why this virus is so tricky. It's why it's such a nefarious foe. But it's also why the testing is so important to help screen that workforce. And one isn't enough because you'd have to go back to that same senior center. And I had a side conversation with Dr. Burks. Is it once every 10 days or once a week? Obviously, in an ideal world, you're testing people every day. That's not possible in our world. We live in the real world. She advised that once a week was a good protocol to shoot for with regards to testing asymptomatic employees as we scale up testing. So we had an additional conversation about that around the supplies, around the desire to make sure that American people have the opportunity to earn a living and support themselves, and the thoughtful way that that needs to occur. I wanted to, and I did, sort of push back on this dichotomy of you're open or you're closed. There's no state that's open. There's no state that's closed. That's simply a false narrative. Even the states that are trumpeting the largest around being open are nothing like they were in January, February. No sporting events, no large groups of people, no concerts. And the states that are quote unquote closed certainly aren't closed. They still have all of these critical people going to work every day. It could be 20, 30, 40% of the workforce. So the truth lies in this gray area in between. And we in Colorado are not alone in trying to figure this out, how to have as much economic activity as possible resembling close to our full economy, and we're rapidly getting there, and we're leading the way among the states, while at the same time having less physical proximity than we normally have, meaning folks who can telecommute should be telecommuting. Offices are at 50% capacity, which means many people are telecommuting. If they have to be there, they can be there at different times and staggered so that people can have more social distancing at work. Hopefully, you've seen some of the steps that have been taken by our retail stores that are open around cleanliness and limiting the number of customers, and of course, the employees in those retail environments wearing masks. And this is another important reminder for you. The employees in those stores are wearing masks, whether it's a order in your area from your mayor or your commissioners or not. It's really important. You owe it to those people who are working there to also wear a mask when you go into those stores. You are, of course, helping protect them, exposed to hundreds or thousands of customers a day. You are also protecting yourself. Then that life you save, maybe that person behind the counter, it may be your aunt or uncle or your brother or sister, and it may even be yours. And the better that Coloradans do at wearing masks and trying to be at least 6 feet away for others where we can, the better we're going to get through this. And better means two things. It means saving lives, the most lives intact and healthy, and it means the strongest possible economy and economic growth. And the two very much go hand in hand. You can't have a strong economy when people live in mortal fear because of mass casualties. And it's absolutely critical that Coloradans rise to the occasion, as I know you are, exercise individual responsibility, and live our lives in a way that protect ourselves and others. So that's a brief summary of my meeting with the president. We'd be happy to open this up to questions from Colorado.
Hello, Governor. This is Vinny Del Giudice at Bloomberg News in Denver. Are you confident in the federal effort to manage the health emergency after meeting with the president, or does the president continue to place the primary responsibility on the states and territories? Thank you, sir.
Look, the president has some strong advisors like Dr. Birx, Dr. Fauci. I'm certainly hopeful that he listens to those advisors and heeds their wise words. We value our partnership with the federal government. You know that the president and I have had our differences on different policies. This is not a time to air differences on unrelated policies. This is a time for all Americans to work together because we all have a common foe. The foe is COVID-19 and coronavirus, and the foe is the economic devastation that's occurring across the world. And we need all hands on deck, setting any ideological beefs aside, to be able to work together to save lives and restore our economy to strength.
Hi, Governor. This is Blair Miller from Denver 7. Thanks for doing this. I was just wondering, the White House, while you were meeting, tweeted out a number of supplies provided to Colorado. They said 181 million gloves, 9.5 million N95 surgical and procedural masks, 251,000 eye and face shields, and 2.6 million isolation and surgical gowns through FEMA and coordinated public-private partnerships. I'm just wondering if those numbers are accurate and if there was anything else that the president or the administration promised you numbers-wise today.
So yeah, I saw that sign when I walked in there too, and I was like, wait a minute. And then I read the small print on the bottom, and as you indicated, it was from the federal government and public-private partnerships, meaning everything we bought. So yes, reflecting everything that we bought, those are close to the approximate numbers. I mean, I obviously didn't have the chance to double check them. But that was not a number of equipment that was simply supplied by the federal government. In a way, it was sort of, taking credit, and that's something that politicians do. They say, oh, they want to use the big number, and President Trump's no different. So he put the big number up there. But that is really both the public-private partnerships that we ourselves forged, as well as the federal government. And I have not double checked the numbers, but in that context of that small print, it made a lot more sense than when I first saw it and said, wait a minute, the federal government didn't send us this many masks or gloves or anything like that. That being said, the federal government is an important partner in this, and especially this partnership around supplying the nursing homes. Obviously, in the early days, the national stockpile was critical. We quickly blew through that, but that was critical in the early days as some of these supply chains come back online.
Hi, Governor. Jesse, the Colorado Sun here. I wondered if you talked to the president at all about the problems that Colorado's been having with the Trump administration swooping in for some of these supplies that Colorado's been trying to get. I know Ebenezer, the nursing home out in Morgan County, had an issue with this, and they've been pretty hard hit. And I also wanted to ask, the governor was pretty critical about mail-in voting, which is something that Coloradans really value and something that the state has championed. And he talked about how this is an effort to ensure Republicans lose. And I wondered if you talked to him about that and if you have any response to that allegation.
So we're very excited about the FEMA program to supply our nursing homes with personal protection equipment. The first shipment May 18th. There's a second shipment a week or two later. I urge the president to continue that program through June and July. We need it online longer to make sure our nursing homes have the supplies they need. We are also, some of these supplies that we talked about with the 96,000 tests in this first batch from Thermo Fisher, that's part of our state testing around the nursing homes as well. With the Colorado National Guard and separately in partnership with Colorado State University, we are going to, starting with the largest nursing homes in the state, testing the workers on a regular basis to help prevent additional outbreaks at those facilities. Look, I heard the president talk about the mail voting too. We in Colorado have been voting by mail for years. I don't even remember another way of doing it. Coloradans take it for granted. Republican, Democrat, Independent. It's very popular. It's how we vote. Even before it was the main way of voting, most Coloradans voted that way. I wasn't about to bring in a different topic into that meeting because I'm here to advocate around COVID-19, around coronavirus, not to get into a debate or correct the president when he makes inaccurate statements around the reliability of mail-in voting. I'm happy to do that in this forum. Mail-in voting is safe, it's secure. Colorado's been doing it for many, many years. I think not only is, of course, it a safer way to prevent congregating around voting sites, but frankly, it's a better way to make it more convenient to vote, especially in a state like Colorado, with citizen initiatives on the ballot. Usually people, the way voters in Colorado, they want to research things, they look them up on the computer, they figure out how to vote. You don't want to take a whole notebook of notes into a voting booth. And that's why vote by mail is so popular in Colorado and why I think it'll continue to spread across the country. Do we have additional questions? I'll give you an anecdote while we're getting the next question online. So it all went very smoothly. We were tested. Jill Ryan and I, the head of CDPHE, in a holding room. Took about 20 minutes, got the test result, then went into a larger room. And that's where I got to talk to Governor of North Dakota, who I know. He's very active in Western Governors Association, a couple senators, Dr. Birx, Jared Kushner came by, and I had met with Jared Kushner and President Trump just a few weeks ago before COVID-19, before we knew about COVID-19 in Colorado, that is. It had already existed in China and in Italy on Air Force One around Space Command. And we did briefly talk about Space Command with the president as well today, where he spoke very highly of Colorado's bid and then mentioned that the generals think very highly of Colorado as the best site for Space Command. So I continue to be cautiously optimistic about Space Command. I'm an advocate for Colorado because I know it's the best place for Space Command infrastructure. We have the best workforce, and we're ready to go with regards to protecting space and our critical communications infrastructure. Next question.
Hi, Governor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Haley Sanchez with CPR News. On Monday, you shut down a restaurant in Castle Rock because they endangered public health by serving people in-house. But then you tweeted to Elon Musk and invited him to bring Tesla to Colorado. And in California, he defied a local public health order when the factory should have been closed. Is there a difference between what these two businesses did? And are you concerned at all that your response to each has sent mixed messages to Coloradans?
Well, in Colorado, nothing associated with transportation was ever shut. We consider transportation to be an essential part of our economy. CDOT work continued, road construction work, that all continued through the crisis. I don't know exactly what all of Elon Musk's frustrations with California are. This might be the straw that broke the camel's back, but there's been frustrations that have dated for months and years. I always pursue every opportunity to attract good jobs to Colorado. So when I saw an opening a few months ago that Cybertruck was looking for a place to locate, and we saw an additional opening that perhaps Tesla might be looking to move some of their office personnel, I wanted to highlight that Colorado is the best possible place for electric vehicle manufacturing in the country, and that we really pride ourselves on leading the way in electric vehicles and bringing an electric vehicle manufacturing company or electric truck manufacturing company to Colorado to take advantage of our strong business environment, our skilled workforce, and the ability to attract and motivate workers from across the world of the best talents and engineers to come work in our great state.
Governor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Alex with the Post. Two things. First of all, quickly, roughly how long did you have with the president that wasn't in the televised portion where there was media there? How long were you guys talking? And then secondly, you said that you're there not to get into debates with him about unrelated topics, but election security is a hugely important, relevant coronavirus-related topic right now because we need safe ways for people to be able to vote. Why didn't you say anything to him about it, given that relevance?
So we met for probably about 20 minutes or so after the press left, maybe 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. I wasn't timing it, and continued the discussion with a lot of specifics around these asks that I've outlined to you. Again, I don't remember which part was there when the reporters there or weren't there, but we talked about the 96,000 tests that the president said have already arrived, meaning they will arrive in Colorado shortly. And then the additional commitments going forward, the desire to continue the supply of the personal protection equipment to the nursing homes. I think a sound approach throughout this is not to pick political fights with anybody in particular, but rather to have a spirit of collaboration, a spirit of international collaboration. We appreciate receiving over 100,000 masks from Taiwan. We appreciate the work with the Korean ambassador around the Solgen tests that have arrived. And a spirit of cooperation domestically, meaning a spirit of cooperation with Vice President Pence, with the president, with FEMA, with CDC, with really anybody who can help save lives in Colorado and reduce the economic uncertainty that is really hurting business in our state, along with the public health crisis. Oh, you asked about voting. So, yeah, I mean, we have voting in Colorado. We do it in a safe way. We don't vote in person. I mean, there's a way to vote in person if you lost your ballot. I mean, that should, of course, continue. But we are a model for the nation. We're a model in voter participation, in turnout. Voters across the ideological spectrum are really thrilled with how we run our elections in Colorado. We have great ways to prevent fraud. So I hope that other states and the federal government really learn from what Colorado and Washington and many other states have done, Washington State, and really make sure that we can vote in as safe as way as possible and preserve the integrity of our democracy as well. People shouldn't need to fear a disease just to be able to vote. And that's particularly dangerous for those who might have pre-existing conditions, voters in their 80s and 90s, who, for good reason, from a public health perspective, would be advised not to go wait at a polling station, but in all cases should be able to vote from their home if they need to.
Hello, Governor. I'm Jesus Carrasquel from Noticias Univisión. Please, in Spanish, Gobernador, ¿cuáles fueron los resultados de su conversación con el presidente Trump?
Hoy fui a reunión con presidente Trump en la Casa Blanca y reunir con él y algunos de sus diputados sobre nuestras necesidades en Colorado. Por ejemplo, máscaras a nuestros casos de los viejos, de los ancianos. Necesitamos más. También pruebas. Estamos trabajando junto con algunos negocios y también nuestro gobierno federal para recibir más pruebas de COVID-19 y ahora ya ofrecimos pruebas gratis en 32 sitios en Colorado. Centros de pruebas, centros de exámenes, comunidades, donde toda la gente puede ir y recibir pruebas gratis de COVID-19.
Hi, Governor. This is Jordan.
Go ahead.
Governor, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Governor. This is Jordan Chavez with 9 News. As you mentioned earlier when you were speaking with the president, is that some restaurants and some that we have heard from as well, they rely heavily on their dine-in options to make their money that way. What realistically and logistically would need to happen in order for restaurant dining rooms to open by the end of May? And since we are nearly there, how close are we to making that actually happen?
Well, first of all, the data needs to hold up in terms of the plateau and the disease being in abeyance, and that's a result of the successful work of Coloradans staying at home when you can, avoiding social contact with others, wearing masks in public. We're doing it. We're doing it, right? And you're doing a great job. And that's why we're at this point where there already are restaurants open in Grand Junction, Colorado, soon in several other small counties that have a low viral load. And why we hope that by the end of May, they're open at some capacity in our major metropolitan areas. We as a state have had our restaurants open throughout this entire crisis. They've done curbside, they've done takeout, they've done delivery, counter service, everything except for in-room dining. We know that though for restaurants to continue to succeed, there needs to be that in-room dining component. And we want to work with restaurants. I had a call with a number of restaurants yesterday to start the work with the health officials on those protocols that'll allow them to operate in a way that inspires customer confidence and means that when they open, they're not empty because customers are confident it's a safe experience and has those real life transitions that can improve the quality and safety of the experience. One of them is, but while they're likely to open at reduced capacity indoors, and in Grand Junction, they're only at 25% capacity today, we also want to find ways that they can expand tables outdoors, meaning how can municipalities like Denver, like Colorado Springs, like Boulder, allow tables on sidewalks, even in parking spaces, to make sure that people are better spaced in a safer environment that can help get these restaurants through these difficult economic times.
Hi, Governor. This is Colette from News 5 in Colorado Springs. I have a two-part question. The state health department says it takes around a week for a variance from the safer at home order to be approved. And today I'm talking to Teller County, who's applied for a variance. Right now they have no active cases and they've seen 2 deaths from the virus total. So what would be your words right now for residents who are getting anxious or restless about reopening, and business owners who might feel like there's no end in sight and they can't wait that extra week for a variance to be approved? What would you say to calm their nerves?
Well, first of all, the vast majority of Colorado businesses are open. I mean, every store can be open if they want to, manufacturing, offices. So at this point, we're talking about restaurants. For customers to return to restaurants, we need to make sure that people know and have confidence that those restaurants are safe. We're working on those state health guidelines around restaurants. We expect to have them in circulation by next week. We don't yet have the date that they go live as a state. We certainly hope it's May 25th or that last week in May. That date will be determined on data we don't have. But in the meantime, certainly many counties with low viral counts are interested in opening their restaurants. We're very excited about that. Mesa County's already opened their restaurants. I believe there's a couple other, Sedgwick County. There's a number of other applications that are in, and we want to make sure that those are evaluated and approved as quickly as possible, because nobody should have to be closed a day longer than absolutely necessary. We want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to continue their small business and continue to supply those critical services in communities like Teller County. Okay. I want to thank all of you for joining us. You can find out more information at covid19.colorado.gov. I very much look forward to returning home to Colorado tomorrow. But today was a very important discussion for the future of the supply chain of Colorado, and to make sure that the president was up to date on what's going on in the ground, the pain that a lot of small businesses are facing, and the anxiety and the fear around the health situation. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you back home in person on Friday.